Iran, a country brimming with energy, exploding with construction and development, a dynamic state with a thriving capital. Iran, a unique endeavor. In an age when so many monarchies perished and Mohammad Reza Shah had ascended to the throne, Iran still adheres to her constitutionalist traditions. With the oldest constitution in all Asia, she still remains a monarchy. Symbol of the new role of women in Muslim Iran is the active participation of Farah, the Shah Banu, in representing the dynasty, the state. She's in charge of whole sectors of national life, particularly in the fields of social activities, art, and culture. The hearts of the Persians are still in the ruins of Persepolis, the ancient capital built in 520 BC by Darius, 230 years later burned by Alexander of Macedonia. In 1971, Iran celebrates her 2,500th birthday as a nation, as a state, and as a monarchy, the oldest monarchy in the world with the youngest dynasty. But looking back to the empire of Cyrus, of Darius, of Xerxes, Throughout the vast empire, a whole network of roads and communications was established. Throughout the centuries, on the ruins of old towns, new ones were erected. And again, on the remnants of these, layer on layer, in this country so often invaded. During these thousands of years, the Iranians were often conquered, yet never colonized. So they remained a proud people, conscious of their history and of their heritage. From the southern regions burnt by the scorching sun, the Trans-Iranian Railway provides one of the few connections to the Caspian littoral in the north, where rainfall reaches 60 inches per year. Yet, as everywhere in Iran, most of the country's 60,000 villages are isolated from the outside world. Oil, the basis of Iran's wealth. The oil boom offering new opportunities, new challenges for the country's development. Steel mills built by the Russians, partly in exchange for delivery of natural gas to the Soviet Union. Iranian assembly and manufacturing plants already produce the greater part of all motor vehicles now needed in the country. This ancient land's armed forces today are continually equipped with the latest weapons. Iran's military strength has aroused suspicion even in the West. It should be remembered, however, that Iran again and again in her history has been unable to resist so many foreign invasions because of her military weakness. The Shah, here with Egypt's Sadat, has learned his lesson. Britain's main interest? Oil. As early as 1901, the Englishman William Knox D'Arcy had been granted a 60-year oil concession. The 26th of May, 1908, marked the beginning of the oil industry in the Middle East. February 21st, 1921, was the day of Reza Khan's coup d'etat with his Cossacks. He marched to Tehran and overthrew a weak and tottering government. Eventually, firm control over the whole country was established. All Russian concessions in Iran were abolished, concessions for Britain granted by the old government cancelled, with the exception of the old oil concession. In 1925, the last Shah of the Qajar dynasty was deposed by the Majlis, Iran's parliament. Reza Khan, then prime minister, is elected Shah. The official coronation takes place on the so-called Peacock throne. Out of Reza Shah's family, his eldest son, Mohammad Reza, is appointed crown prince. The years of the government of Reza Shah, later to be named Reza Shah the Great, are the years in which the foundations of a sovereign and modern state are laid. In 1928, the king of neighboring Afghanistan pays the first state visit to the newly born Iran. Another state visit with another neighbor. Reza Shah, this time not the host, but the guest. Visit to Kemal Ataturk, founder of New Turkey. Celebration of a wedding day. Crown Prince Mohammad Reza is married to Princess Fauzi of Egypt, a liaison which will be unsuccessful. World War I had proved to the Iranians how badly they needed a strong army for self-defense. Roosevelt and Churchill agree upon the Atlantic Charter, guaranteeing every nation's right to self-determination. But in flagrant violation of the provisions of the Charter, Iran will soon be made a victim of the big powers' conflict. British bombers attack the Iranian fleet and sink most of the ships, causing considerable loss of life. Reza Shah had declared his country neutral, but in August 1941, as they had done in the First World War, without forewarning, the Russians and the English invaded Iran. British troops enter Iran from the south, Russians from the north. Soon, Russian and British units meet in the middle of a sovereign country, just like occupation powers. Officially, the capital of Tehran is exempt from occupation, but in reality, very soon it will be a center of foreign activities. Now, the Shah himself, here in his last filmed appearance, abdicates and leaves the country. The true masters for the moment, the British and Soviet ambassadors, are of course interested in the security of their soldiers, but not so much in the stability of the government. To ensure inner stability, the Crown Prince consequently has to act quickly. In Parliament, Mohammad Reza, within a few days after his father's abdication, takes the oath as the new Shah. Under the circumstances, it is almost a new coup d'etat. Tehran, 1943. This is the city where the first conference of the Big Three will take place, a conference decisive for the fate of the post-war world. Toward the end of 1943, the Big Three are, of course, preoccupied with the big decisions which would determine their future mutual relationship. Mohammad Reza Shah meets Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin. The independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Iran is finally recognized by the Allies in a solemn declaration. Iran, in the meantime, suffers heavily from the effects of the occupation. What influence is left for the Shah? In those days, Mohammad Reza Shah takes advantage of the unique role of the Americans who had not invaded Iran and had no imperialist past there, as had the Russians and English. Finally, the Iranians are again masters in their own house. Mohammad Reza Shah himself visits the London Games of 1948 to demonstrate Iran's presence. 1 year after that visit to London, the first attempt on the Shah's life is made. In the following years, 4 more such attempts will be made. In the first years of the United Nations' existence, much is expected from this organization. So the Shah pays a visit to the World Forum to plead for his country.
Without peace, the smaller countries can make no advance in their efforts to attain high living standards and social justice. With peace, we can do all. Therefore, speaking in behalf of one of the smaller countries, I make this appeal. Do not fail us.
The Shah's appeal, though welcomed emphatically by world opinion, does not help very much. The country does possess natural riches which could help to develop Persia. But Iran's oil is being exploited by others. It is the British who get the lion's share of the huge oil profits and who refuse for a long time to grant a greater share to the country from whose soil this wealth is extracted. In this situation, demagogues are ready at hand. The then Prime Minister propagates nationalization of the oil industry, expropriation of the foreign companies. No more concessions for any foreigner. Iran must do everything on her own. The architect of this radical policy, Prime Minister Mossadegh, when the British do not agree, he stops oil production. While British technicians and their families leave the country, America's Special Ambassador Harriman, as an intermediary, tries to settle the dispute. Harriman's mission in Tehran fails. The British-Iranian case is submitted to the United Nations as well as to the International Court in The Hague. Mossadegh's policy fails. Mossadegh organizes riots in Tehran. Their aim, to overthrow the Shah, who has decided to dismiss his prime minister, whose policy he feels is disastrous for the country. For a short time, it seems as if this rebellion, directed by the prime minister against the monarch, is successful. But the wave rolls back. Demonstrations in favor of the Shah, in which the military joins too. General Zahedi, appointed prime minister by the Shah, takes over government. If Washington expressed open sympathy for the Shah remaining in power, the Today party was helped by Moscow. Mossadegh's trial for high treason. The death penalty is threatening. Under the new government, a settlement is reached with the British over the oil issue. Hamburg Harbor. The policy of independence and self-reliance requires know-how and modern equipment. Learning and purchasing abroad, as at Stuttgart in the Mercedes plant, which eventually will become partly Persian property when the oil boom for the first time makes possible Iranian investments abroad. Chancellor Adenauer from the Federal Republic of Germany. On this occasion, Soraya, partly of German descent, is interpreting. Her marriage to the Shah will not produce an heir to the throne, vital for the dynasty, and they'll be divorced shortly. And for the first time in her relations with Great Britain, as here on the occasion of a state visit to London, Iran is treated as an equal sovereign power. On December 21st, 1959, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi is married to Faradiba. 10 months later, a son is born to the royal couple, vital for the dynasty, for Iran's monarchy, an heir to the throne.
But his dynasty had fallen.
In the last 10 years of his reign, the Shah thought that he had bought security through his weapons and through his police, through Sadak. But neither the Shah nor Sadak moved against that force which was older than the Shah. This was the power of the Church of Muhammad. And because there were millions of people who in one way or another had been oppressed by the regime, they found the only vehicle for this expression was the mosque. And against the mosque, the Shah was in essence powerless. The one body, the one faith, the one power against which the Shah could not maintain his rule. The portrait of the Shah goes up in flames. The Shah has gone up in flames. He's been driven from his country, in all likelihood, never to return.